Thanks for joining us today. Before introducing Roberto and Bella, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Chris, and in addition to being an Airstream owner myself, I get to work with Airstream's brand ambassadors, helping to share their stories of adventure, curiosity, and exploration in their Airstream. We created Ask an Airstreamer to help connect Airstream owners with others who are curious to learn what Airstreaming is all about. I remember when I was on my journey to become an Airstreamer a few years ago, and I found it really helpful to connect with those already using an Airstream, learning about where they go and what it's like to tow. This is our 4th edition of Ask an Airstreamer. If you'd like to see the others, they're online at airstream.com. And today we'll have an hour together. Roberto and Bella will share with us how they use their Airstream Sport, where they've been, how they work from the road, and more. We'll stop for questions along the way, in addition to having a dedicated Q&A session at the end. To submit your questions at any point today, go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions, but if we do run out of time, we'll share an email address at the end to submit your questions. Before I turn it over to Roberto and Bella, I want to call out 3 quick things. There are countless ways to use an Airstream Sport, the predecessor to today's Airstream Bambi and Caravel travel trailers. Well, Roberto and Bella are going to share the way that they use their Airstream. Keep in mind that the options are almost limitless. Secondly, there's a 2-question survey that will pop up after we wrap up today. We'd love your feedback so we can learn what you liked and things we can do better in future editions. And finally, at the end of today's session, we'll share a promo code for Airstream Supply Company, which is part magazine, part travel guide, and part outfitter. So that's it for me. I'll turn it over to Roberto and Bella, Airstream ambassadors and sport owners. Guys, thanks for sharing part of your Saturday with us.
Thanks, Chris, for introducing us, and welcome all of you who are curious about Airstream's line of single-axle travel trailers.
We're delighted to be able to share a little bit about our lifestyle, some tips on traveling with kids on the road, and of course, our favorite gear to travel with.
Home is Canada. We have a cozy condo in Whistler, right at the base of the mountain. It's the perfect place for our little crew. Plenty of outdoor activities, as well as spectacular nature for our content creation. Right now, we've got the Airstream parked by the Cheakamus River, where I use it both as my office and our country house.
We're eager to hit the road to see new places and share moments with our 3.5-year-old boy Mikio and our 1.5-year-old Catalina. We're leaving next week to explore the more remote areas of BC to go canoe tripping, hiking, backcountry camping, kiteboarding, paddleboarding, and of course, Airstreaming.
We're an adventure travel family with a penchant for expeditions, extreme sports, and traveling to spectacular destinations all over the world. Our Airstream, nicknamed Happy, is small yet agile and has everything we need. It has allowed us to explore Canada and the USA coast to coast in the most comfortable of ways. After every stint in the backcountry, we come back to Happy, grab a hot shower, hot coffee, jump into a warm bed, and rejuvenate for the next adventure.
Roberto grew up camping since he was 10, and he was sent to canoe tripping camp in Quebec for many years. It's here that his love of nature and backcountry travel started. I came from a very different culture where spending time in nature is not something very common. Well, you see, I grew up in Senegal, West Africa, and only got into this lifestyle because of Roberto. Whereas in the early years, I did it for him. Well, now I couldn't imagine living any other way. The simplicity of constantly being outdoors makes life all the more enjoyable.
People often ask us what it is we actually do for a living. We're travel photographers, content creators, videographers, social media influencers, entrepreneurs, and once in a while bilingual show hosts. We had a series on Discovery Channel for Jeep, as well as being the show host for Canada's largest ever tourism campaign for the country's 150th anniversary. We also rent our condo on Airbnb, offer photo shoots for families, and as a side income, I even do some stocking, which yes, I do from the Airstream.
Well, let me focus on our main job, which is to create photos and videos for companies, and that they use for everything from packaging to video ads, to trade show booths, to social media, to billboards, magazines, and more. Some partners come on board for an annual fee, while others do so for individual projects that we might have. One of our greatest traits is that we work with a vast area of brands, which creates an incredible amount of cross-marketing for all those involved. And my favorite part of it all is that we get to do our job together as a family.
In 2017,
Roberto and Bella, just a quick question here. So you mentioned earlier that you will use the trailer and then Airbnb your condo or your home in Worcester. Can you talk a little bit about more like when and how you guys do that and why?
Yeah, for sure. So we live in Worcester, so it's a wonderful ski season here. So normally during the winter months, we'll be renting out our place. And it's one of the things that allowed us to have our Airstream because we rent so much that it's very easy to pay for the Airstream. So most of the time we'll do so in winter and a little bit in batches in summertime as well.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sure. So in 2017, we got our Airstream Sport. We chose it because it's nimble enough to fit in a parking spot or driveway, do an easy U-turn, and fit into the coolest of camp spots. With two little ones that don't stop growing, it's starting to get a little tight. The Airstream Sport has now evolved into the Caravel or Bambi, both of which are single axle trailers.
Ideally, we would love to have two Airstreams, one for more nimble travels, and the second as the family travel rig. Our second one would be the Globetrotter 30-foot. There are advantages to both, one for flexibility and the other with so much added comfort. Right now, the rig we have is just perfect. And I tell my husband that all the time, we have the best rig in the world because it's ours. And still, I know that when the kids are gonna be about 8 or 9, they will appreciate the spacier 30-foot Airstream. But for now, we're just perfect.
Agreed.
So a little bit about Airstream's Bambi and Caravel. In an effort to simplify the model lineup and offer more options within the lineup, Airstream decided to sunset the Sport, which was available in 16 and 22-foot floor plans. While the Sport existed, Airstream also had two single-axle Flying Cloud models, which were 19 and 20. So to clean all of that up, Airstream decided to bump all Flying Clouds to dual axles, starting with a 23-foot floor plan, and consolidate the single axle travel trailers into a full lineup. From 16 to 22-foot floor plans, the Bambi now represents the next evolution of small, agile silver bullets. With the release of Bambi as a model name, not just a nickname, Airstream also announced the Caravel, an upgrade to Bambi's standard features. The Caravel references a historical model name that was used by Airstream in the 1960s. The screenshot on the screen right now is a great blog that compares the two travel trailers at airstream.com. Roberto and Bella, back to you.
We've towed happy with a Toyota Tundra or a Jeep Gladiator. The first gives us the mega payload required for big adventures or cross-country trips where we are gear laden. And the Jeep, while fully capable to haul the Airstream, also gives us the flexibility to kick out exploring more remote and rougher trails. We got the Gladiator with the tow package. For those that wonder if the Gladiator will pull an Airstream, indeed it can tow over 8,000 pounds. This is the one with the tow package. Also, Bella loves driving the smaller size Jeep, and days with the rooftop off are even better. Towing our Airstream has been a lot easier than I imagined it to be. At only 3,500 pounds, we're able to drive it up big mountains handedly, and which is a must when we live in Whistler. We also don't require the use of a weight distribution hitch, as the camper is so small and light. Frankly, with either of the vehicles, I don't even notice it behind me most of the time.
Roberto and Bella, two follow-up questions here on towing. Can you talk a little bit more about what the experience is like specifically with the Jeep Gladiator while you're towing?
Oh, for sure. Well, you really don't feel it. We have the tow package on the Jeep, so it can pull up to 8,000 pounds. So once you're on the road, you really don't feel it behind you. It's a very small trailer. And I think that's one of the main things we like the most. The only time we'll feel it was maybe going up a mountain or down a mountain. But besides that, it's really almost like it wasn't even there.
And then how about...
And the whole trailer is not intimidating to drive for women, which I find very comfortable because it's a smaller trailer.
How about a little bit about how you guys got to the pickup truck as just a type of vehicle for your tow vehicle, and then more specifically, you guys tow with a Toyota. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So originally we got the Sport simply because we could pull it with our SUV that we had at the time. But then we started to have kids and we realized that it's for safety. If ever you have an accident, you don't want things flying around in the cab of the vehicle. So by having a pickup, all the gear goes in the back, my heavy cameras, anything that could go flying around the cab,
Right.
and then the kids and the family are in the front. And because we have so much gear all the time, it's one of the main reasons why we went for the Tundra, to be able to put all of our stuff in there, because we have a lot of gear.
With the added cap up and the pickup.
Yeah, because it gives double the space than when we don't have the cap.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Having an Airstream means a life of freedom and adventure with a dash of wonder, but mostly it means family to us. For people outside of the Airstream community, it may represent a status symbol, but for us, it's more about community, passion, pride, comfort. It's a reminder of an accomplishment that was achieved because we put our mind to it. Everyone without an Airstream will typically ask the standard question, how much did you pay? But it's not about that. It's about so much more. What's the value of happiness, for example? I think that's the link that ties the Airstream community. Talking with other Airstreamers usually ends up being about person-to-person connection and hearing each other's story. I love the Airstream community, whether it's chatting with another Airstreamer online for some tips, waving to the driver of another Airstream on the road, or automatically going to chat with someone at our camp that also has a silver bullet, which Roberto usually always goes.
I'm the chatty one.
I follow. The Airstream forums are also spectacular spots to learn, communicate, and chat with like-minded travelers. And if you're thinking of getting one, it's a great spot to start getting an idea if what this life is all about. We use happy in so many different ways. When we're home, Roberto parks it in the forest and uses it as his office. And when we're traveling, it's the family home. When we have friends or family in Whistler, it doubles as a condo for them to stay in. It's also Roberto's adventure pod for when he takes solo trips somewhere. During this pandemic, it's been an incredible tool to keep the kids away from home when our condo building is very busy. And during lockdowns, it's the perfect place to be away from the world safely with the kids, while not being cooped up inside and not having to worry about them touching high contact things like the elevator buttons. It makes life simpler and at times like these, more normal.
We usually go about 4 to 5 months at a time in the Airstream. For us, it means exploration and adventure, seeing new places and sometimes being on the go as much as possible. But it also means slowing down, parking by a lake, and spending some slow time as we wind down from the frequent movement. Also, being parked in the most beautiful places we can find is a big part of our travel life. I'm probably one of the pickiest camp spot selectors. I can often spend like 20 minutes thinking, no, that one, maybe that one.
Which I love in the end because it's worth it.
Yeah, then she'll say, oh, you took a long time, but it was good.
That's good. Yeah.
We also try and vary up the topography of the places we go to and the activities we do. We drive more through places that aren't much of an interest and stop and camp in those places that we would like to spend more time in. During the ski season, we'll often camp in our rig at the local campground so that we can rent our place on Airbnb, like I mentioned earlier. Funny, we've actually met several other Airstreamers in the campgrounds while we're doing that. We use this Airstream in various ways, but during the off season is when we tend to camp it up at the campground the most. And that's when we're sedentary. And then the summertime, we just travel and go.
You guys have a few questions coming in about camping and boondocking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have solar, and then how effective is that when you're out camping? And tell us a little bit about your approach to energy usage and generation when you're out and about.
She looks at me because I'm in charge of that.
Right? But I know summertime is great.
Yeah. So in the summertime when we've got lots of sunlight, like on a day like today, we've got a 30-watt solar panel on the roof. We've got 2 fold-out 80 solar panels from Zamp Solar, And in the summertime, we get literally all the energy that we need without having to touch a generator just from that, because during the day it'll cycle through. But in the wintertime, that's when we have to switch it up because we don't have as much sun, especially up here in northern Canada. And that's when I use the Honda generator and then basically just boost the Airstream when needed.
Awesome. A question here around single axle versus dual axle. You guys have a single axle. You've put a lot of miles on it.
Yeah.
I know when it comes to tire safety, more tires can generally be better than fewer. Ways obviously to mitigate that using tire pressure monitoring systems to help give you early warning about pressure and temperature before something happens. Any issues with the single axle trailer and where you guys have gone and some of the places you've been?
We've driven a lot with the rig, and we've never had any issue whatsoever. You know, I think maintenance is an important thing too. We had the ball bearings repacked the other day as well. One time we literally went airborne in the Northwest Territories. There's parts where the road freezes and it heaves, so it becomes like a big dip and you don't see it coming, and literally the truck went airborne and then the Airstream went behind me up, and I was like, oh boy, this isn't going to be good. And we literally landed sturdily. Everything was fine. I was in shock that we were still alive, and we're just like, oh geez. But I think it's a testament to how well an Airstream is made, because I think another camper might just have disintegrated like poof. So
we've never had any issues. We've taken it on dirt roads, forestry roads, highways.
Take it slow on the forestry roads.
Right, and we've never had an issue.
No, never had an issue.
Follow-up question here on solar panels and electricity. So in the summertime, you guys have one panel on the roof, a couple fold-outs that go alongside the Airstream.
Yeah.
Do you perpetually just have enough power to do all the things you want when it's sunny outside?
Yeah, so I should have added to the answer there a little bit. So we use the ZAMP panels for all of the energy that the camper needs. And then we don't take any extra juice off of it by using our laptops and things like that. And instead we have a Jackery power station with its own set of solar panels that we use for everything that's laptops and gadgets for now. Because that way we don't have to basically charge up the Airstream. It charges up just with the solar panels. But that way we know that the energy that we took that day from the sun is really only for the Airstream systems. Yeah.
Cool. And then one other question here on docking, and that's around the composting toilet. I know that some folks will install those to get rid of the need to empty your black tanks and your, have you guys thought about that? Do you have that now?
No, we have just a regular one. We've never had to, we've never, one of the things with the Sport is that both the gray and the black go into the same tank. So it keeps a very, very clean tank comparatively to a split tank. But we have heard about the composting toilets making your stay boondocking longer. So definitely something to look into. But we're happy as is at the moment.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Our favorite two spots that our rolling home has taken us to in the last year is one close to home and another far from it. So beginning nearby, it's hard to beat having our silver pod parked at the Spit in Squamish and kite surf right then and there. So grabbing a hot shower right after riding in some really cold wind and water is divine. And the other place that left us with fond memories is White Sands in New Mexico. It's such a unique and barren landscape that makes you feel like you're on another planet. And of course, sledding down the dunes was quite the contrast to the snow we would normally sled down back home.
During the last 3 years, we've gotten to explore so much of North America with Happy the Airstream. From canoe tripping in the Northwest Territories to camping right near the water in Nitnat to all across Canada. We've been coast to coast in the USA and have traveled over 40,000 kilometers with our rig. It's the perfect base for a little family like ours, particularly as we like cold destinations. It keeps us warm and happy. Some important documents that you'll need whenever you're going across the border are your passports, your camper ownership, your insurance papers, And we've also learned that it's a lot easier to try crossing with an empty pantry and empty fridge. That way you don't have to figure out what items of food you're allowed to take across the border and which items are not permissible. Also avoids the hassle of getting stopped at the border for a few hours for them to check if you have a lime or a lemon.
And less waste, because otherwise your food goes in the garbage.
Yeah, if they deem something that isn't supposed to go by. This pandemic has forced us to discover our own province and country even more so. We're also taking it as an opportunity to head to places that are quite off the beaten path. Normally we go international for a good chunk of the year, but now home in the forest, which is why we'll be meandering our way north, stopping in provincial parks here and there as we head to northern BC to go canoe camping on a lake called Boyle Lake. Then a good stint on Vancouver Island, kayaking, kite surfing, surfing in Tofino, before we do an epic trip to Mount Assiniboine.
We also travel with a sorry.
A few more questions coming in here, guys. This one is around any online communities that you recommend. Some people, thinking about purchasing, want to connect with other Airstreamers. Obviously, some of the big ones that come to mind is the Airstream Addicts Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of good owners and owner discussion there, great community there. And then also Air forums. Any others that you guys have found useful in terms of?
We're social media people, so we focus on the hashtags of other Airstreamers, and then we find other Airstreamers, and then we follow each other, and then we start the relationship there. And I think that's been our greatest forum is Instagram. I think for stories and meeting other people.
Meeting other people from Airstream, and then keeping connected through Instagram, so that the community grows bigger and bigger, and then we form groups and ask questions and help each other. Because a lot of Airstreamers would take a trip down to Baja, for example, which is one trip we want to do, and then that's where you can get some information and prepare your trip.
And we've met many Airstreamers on the road that we end up keeping in touch through social as well afterwards.
That's awesome. And some folks are curious what your Instagram handle is so they can find it.
So we've got a few. We've got The Expeditioners.
Which is the main one.
Well, yours is, and then we've got Expeditioners Bella.
I post about my kids and Airstream.
Yeah, for sure. And then we've got our little ones pages, which is Mikio, Orion, and Katarina Sofia.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then one, I know that we talked about this the other day. So you guys are in Whistler condo there. About 15 minutes away, you've established a relationship with a campground. That's I think you mentioned first name basis. So is that where you usually store the Airstream when you're not using it? Is it kind of parked there all the time and acts as a kind of an extension of the house, or?
Yeah, well, we use several different places. So in wintertime, it'll mostly be the Whistler RV Park, which are awesome people that manage it, and it's got a great view that looks out of bluff at the mountains. We also use a place called Calcheck, which is a
recreational site.
Yeah, a recreational site from the province. And that's got beautiful spots, but they're unserviced. And that's where we have the rig now. And then when we're traveling internationally, we have a storage here in Whistler, which is like a container storage place. And that's where we put the Airstream when we're gone somewhere abroad.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks.
We also travel with a two-way satellite communicator, as we've been in a situation before where we have no signal and had car issues. We've also used it for floatplane pickups in the Northwest Territories, and always take it into the backcountry for those situations where you would rather have and not need than need and not have. Tiny living with children requires organization, checklists, a mastering of Tetris, and of course, an open mind. But really, we find it mostly comes down to the desire to adventure and explore. And with that to the forefront, everything else tends to fall into place. Sometimes we had to learn the hard way, like trying to drive for too long when the kids are really tired. And now we just pull over and camp when the kids are too tired. We also make sure to always have the fridge and pantry fully stocked, as we don't like to be limited as to how long we can stay in one place by our supplies. And with so much Airstream travel with the kids, we've got a few key items to recommend, because a happy kid equals happy parents. So we always dress them in merino wool base layers from Icebreaker, and the natural fibers keep their tiny body's temperature regulated in all weather, It's quick to dry because kids will always get wet, and most importantly, stays warm when wet. Two of our favorite items to facilitate our adventures are a Thule sapling child carrier and the chariot stroller. The chariot also attaches to a bike or can be adapted with skis for winter fun. Life jackets. We're a water sport family, and so we keep the kids' Mustang Survival PDFs in the trunk. But I guess my biggest tip for Airstream life with children is not one of gear, but to simply go with the flow. Some days are meant for driving, and while others are just meant for winding down and relaxing. That balance keeps everyone happy.
It does. Funny story. When we were first looking to name our camper, we had settled on Igloo, which is the ice shelter northern communities build when they are out on the land. We chose Happy in the end because Mikya was so constantly delighted with the camper. That being said, Igloo might also have been appropriate as we spend so much time using our rig in winter conditions. A few tips for that. We prefer to use a small electric heater when plugged to the shrine. It's quieter than the unit's heater and easy to point in the area where the heat is most needed. We also always keep the heat on in part to prevent lines from freezing. The sun can be scarce, so we have the generator that we mentioned, the Honda, for boondocking with insufficient sunlight. Another tip that comes to mind, sometimes the snowbanks will make the road significantly narrower, which makes turning around very tricky. So one thing we've done before is we unhitch, turn the truck around, and then rehitch and go the other way.
A couple of questions here about boondocking, and you might cover this in some of the gear that you're about to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're out, you've picked your spot. How long is your typical stay at that spot? And then how do you specifically manage a resource like water, for example? So length of trip, and then are you bringing more water with you to refill the Airstream, or do you kind of use what you have and thoughtful about how you manage it?
For the water, we have a water jug that we always bring because we separate that for our drinking water. Okay. And then we've got we use the water that's in the Airstream for showering and whatnot. So I guess it depends how long we're planning to be in a spot. If we're like, okay, we want to be here a week, but we really don't want to move the rig, then we will shower less, shower faster, maybe do the dishes.
No dishes.
Yeah, maybe we'll do the dishes outside with the water that we've brought.
And we never use, let's say, when we want to make pasta or coffee, so we don't use the water from the Airstream. We use our bottled water for any extra water. And
that just keeps it longer. So I guess it all depends how long we're planning to be in a spot. Right. Now, if it's something certain days it's like, well, I like a very hot and long shower, so we know, okay, a little luxury, extra luxury means we just have to do a few more trips to do the dumping of the
But
soap.
also in our Airstream, we can take the shower hose outside. So if we don't want to fill up the black and the gray water, and so we just shower the kids outside, shower ourselves outside. In summertime, it's lovely, and we still have access to hot water.
And we do that in places like Nitnat, where getting to a dump or is a lot further away.
Right.
And I assume, at least I know when I'm trying to conserve water and showering, it's turn on the water, get your body wet, do the soap, turn off the water. The water's not running like you'd think.
No.
I
only let the kids do that. They're allowed to empty their water until there's no more hot water. Because they enjoy their shower. It's part of the daily routine. And they're two in there, so.
But if I'm showering, she's like, "Hey, are you done yet?"
I know he can't take long showers because Roberto loves long showers. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then one follow-up question about the community. You guys mentioned that you connect with folks on Instagram and use hashtags to find folks. Pretty diverse group of people, younger, older, wide.
Oh yeah.
Everything. Big families,
absolutely,
small families, dogs.
There's a lot. I think originally we used to think that RVers were older people, but they're really not. And I think our generation has minimized or simplified life, I should say, and said, you know what, I could live in a tiny space. I don't need that many things. And whoa, I get to move around the world and travel and explore and open my door and be a different place every day. So I think our millennial generation has also said, you know what, this is a great way to live. So whereas likely previously there were more people that were Older, now I'm starting to see the trend to be a lot in younger people and in young families. And I think for a family, having the shower in the Airstream is like critical.
Yeah.
So whereas van lifers maybe is a demographic that might not have the kids or don't need that luxury yet, as they haven't moved on to the step of having kids. But yeah, definitely a bit of everything.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On to gear.
Yes. So we've always said that we have more gear than clothes. And after all, the icebreaker merino wool clothes we wear are simply the best for all life outdoors. For the same reasons we mentioned for the kids, because it keeps you warm when wet, it's antimicrobial, so less washing, and temperature regulating. Furthermore, being made from natural fibers, it means that it's better for the environment. Duck boots. You never know when you'll need them, but when you do, they're game-changing. We love our wellies from Cami, which is a Canadian company that knows everything about keeping our feet cozy, and whether it's our paddle stomping kids' tiny toes or our own. Summer or winter, we're outdoors plenty, which is why we always tote our Coats Minerals sunscreen. And this is the most important for you and your kids. On the tangent of safety, you never know when an axe might go wayward chopping wood, or a child touches a hot pot, or any other misadventure that you can think of. Being safe, sorry. Being safe means being prepared with an adventure medical kit. We keep our gear charged, whether at the Airstream or in the backcountry, with a Jackery portable power station and solar panels. And we have to keep all our headlamps, cameras, laptops, and gadgets charged.
Yeah, of which we have a lot.
Plenty.
A couple of follow-up questions here on safety. So a lot of places that you guys go are off into the middle of nowhere, and
It's our favorite.
Quite the adventure. You mentioned you have the satellite communications piece. Do you file a plan or share with relatives or friends and family, hey, we're actually going to go here? Talk a little bit about the planning that goes into that.
So I think my parents are the number one people that know where we're going, and frequently, even if we haven't told and they see we're going somewhere because of Insta stories or whatnot, they'll say, okay, where are you going and how long are you going to be there? When should I panic?
Way more about the kids than us. No,
Right.
I'm just kidding.
So that's a key. I think for us, it's basically my parents know where we are. And we also tend to only decide where we're going when we're on the road. Like, it's not very planned out all the time, particularly in our case.
We know roughly a direction.
Yeah, north.
We try to make up the plans as we go.
Yeah. So basically just having a few things as we have the right medical kits. We have the emergency beacon. The emergency beacon, you press a button, it sends my mom a geographic pinpoint of where I am, and I can two-way satellite message if I don't have signal. Having a good medical kit, having in a dry bag, we always have extra clothes for the kids if we're on the canoe and things like that. So I think being redundantly safe is one of the ways to keep our adventures going. But it is definitely a great thing to always let someone know where you'll be.
And be prepared also. We also have a case of dry foods, so canned foods and extra foods that are non-perishable, like pasta and rice, just in case we're far from any grocery stores, and also try to always have clean water to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have a filter in case we run out of water.
And similar in terms of safety and being safe. Question here, Bella, this one's for you about you being comfortable with towing. Another female solo traveler, new to Airstreaming, and would like to know, how did you learn how to safely tow? What was your knowledge base of that?
I wouldn't be on dirt roads or tricky driving. So highways are very, straightforward. You go, you follow your line.
It's a small camper too.
It's a very small camper. So I really don't feel like Roberto was mentioning, it's a very smooth drive. So that makes it even more so comfortable.
You also towed a little trailer back in the day, a little red storage trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm used to that extra feet
Yeah,
behind me. And also just drive, take your time, no rush, don't stress, keep focused, and then it's
I think for her the not stressing was key, was saying, oh, okay, if I'm doing this turn, oh no, you know, you would at the very early stage, you'd be a little frazzled,
Right.
like, oh, I'm not doing the turn right. And I'm like, no, relax, it's all good. You know, you just straighten out a little bit and do it again. And I guess that's practice. And now she's like,
Just don't be scared if,
yeah.
you know, if you scratch it, then you scratch it.
No, but you've never
I never did. The
Yeah.
key is just to trust yourself and not be scared of having to tow a small trailer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you've done great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. So here you have a few of the items that we like for our Airstream lifestyle, from the duck boots that we were mentioning, the medical kits. For medical kits, it's always good to add the things that you need or that you like. For example, we have the mole skins in there so that if it's a hiking trip, we've got stuff for the kids. So definitely personalize it to yourself. We've got our power station. We've got a few actually of them and in different sizes for whatever you might need. Having the right snowsuit for the kids, even we're often in fall-like weather, and we'll just throw the snowsuit on because we'll know it'll get about 4 or 5 Celsius at night, and the kids are just delighted outside. So we've got that outerwear from Rema, which is a great brand from Norway. We've got our propane Camp Chef fireplace. These are fantastic in case that you have a fire ban, which in Whistler we tend to have frequently, although this summer's been very rainy. And that way you can still have your fire without having any hassle or any concern of causing a fire. And obviously our icebreaker base layers. And in case you do want to have a fire, we've got my favorite little fire starters as well, which are from Sol, because the right gear makes everything easier and more comfortable.
Follow-up question on the some of the things that was mentioned previously. You guys use the Garmin InReach communications beacon, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it was Delorme, it became Garmin.
Oh, okay.
That's right. That's right. I think it's the little orange or yellow one. Or
Yeah.
maybe a couple different colors.
Device. Yeah.
Okay. And then question about ground clearance. I know the answer to this, but I'll ask you anyway. So did you install lift kit? Would you think about installing lift kit? And then anything that you've done to make your Airstream more durable?
Yeah, for sure. So we do want to install the lift kit because we do like taking it on back roads. And honestly, the key to taking your Airstream on forestry roads and back roads is just take it slow. That's it. It's not very complicated. You just take it slow. We've added the rock guards. So that
very important to have.
Yes, because we do go on a lot of forestry roads or roads that have a little gravel on them from being in Canada, in the more of the remote regions. So we added the rock guards as well. We added the Wi-Fi system as well of Airstream Connected. And then we added the solar panel on the roof as well.
Awesome. And a little bit more background, the Sport didn't come with rock guards, so you added that after versus the other travel trailers do. It's that secondary piece that sits in the front of it that's easily replaceable if you get a ding on it versus the actual aluminum itself.
Correct. And the reason that they hadn't put it, I believe, on the earlier trailers is to keep the hitch weight down, so that an SUV or a small SUV, in many cases, could take this Airstream. So that's right. Why I think they hadn't put it. But then we switched from the SUV to a pickup, and weight didn't matter.
And a great example of the difference now between Caravel and Bambi is Caravel standard rock guards, right? Come included with it, where Bambi doesn't. So you can always add after the fact, but that's a great example of bringing that distinction to life. So back to you guys.
A life outdoors leads to so much learning. Our kids are still very young, so most learning happens through fun activities like counting trees, pointing out letters in books, catching worms and insects, which Mikio loves, looking at wildlife and telling them about it, just to name a few. We also tote a Pelican case on our travels with books, pens, markers, papers, and crafts. I can't emphasize enough how much hands-on activities make up the majority of our schooling at this point in time. Whether it be cooking with me, I like to include the kids cooking with me, learning to use daddy's cameras, and books, of course. We quickly realized that he would get bored of them if we didn't refresh the library. So whenever we see a used bookstore or a bookstore, we pick up a couple of new ones. Another really neat aspect about being on the road is that Mikio gets to hang out and learn from so many other kids on our travels. We met a group of Airstream families on one trip to the Canadian Rockies, and they had this wonderful concept where each parent of the 5 families took turn teaching the kids as a group. Each parent focused on what they do best. So for example, one father, who's a nurse, taught the kids about bandages and how to use a first aid kit, while another taught them to play the banjo and guitar. One of our favorite tools to use is Google Photos, where you take a picture of anything and it tells you. We do this a fair bit with plants and flowers and find it fascinating that Mikio can name so many already. There's also a relatively new feature where you can Google an animal, like a lion, for example, and then view it in your camper or outside through augmented reality. This gives a close look to wildlife that wouldn't be possible with so many of the animals we Google. And the kids absolutely love it. We also use a learning app on the iPad called Kidopia for those times where we would rather he not be watching a cartoon, but need the distraction for Mikio while we can work. And this app teaches songs, writing, letters, numbers, cooking, and all sorts of educational tools. At this age, developing his motor skills is super important, which is yet another reason we do a lot of physical activities, from teaching him to swim and biking. And as for biking, we let Mikio get the hang of bicycle with trainer wheels, and only a few weeks later took the trainer wheels off so he could learn to balance. We're still in awe of how quickly he went from that stage to using pedals. He's only 3.5 and can already ride a bike and swim. Still, there are other ways to help both entertain them while working on their fine motor skills, like simply letting them play with backpack clips or clasp on cases.
Sometimes the best toys are the simplest
Or
ones.
just looking at the window.
Yeah. So just to extrapolate a little more on one of the tools we use for learning, the Google Photos and Google Lens has got to be called revolutionary. I mean, if I was told as a kid that I could take a picture of whatever animal, thing, tree, item, etc., and that I'd suddenly know everything about it, well, I likely wouldn't have believed you. It's like having an encyclopedia in the palm of your hand, tools to learn everything about a flower or tree or even the aurora borealis, and I still get super, super excited when Mikio's like, look, Papa, wolf cub, like he knows plants so very well. Living in a tiny space isn't as challenging as some people imagine it to be. For one, when you're making the transition, whether it's for a few months or for permanent living, you come to realize that there are simply so many things that you just don't need, which is where the process of keeping organized begins, by getting rid of the things that are simply not needed or redundant. After this, we compartmentalize everything. That is to say that the hampers and shelves above the bed are for Mama Bear and the kids, and then while the front shelves are for books and my gadgets, of which I have a lot, and then the shelf under my, the drawer under my seat is for clothes. We also bring along several Pelican cases, which we use for an assortment of needs. One case is for the extra kitchenware, stove, pots, and pans that go on the fire. Another is for the kids' toys, crafts, and books. And of course, a 30-quart cooler for all the extra food. Then the remaining cases are for the gear, and a little bit more gear. We're a multi-sport family and have our kiteboarding gear, camping gear, kayaking gear, canoe tripping gear, life jackets, drone, camera equipment, strollers, biking gear, etc., which is why it was so important to have a pickup with a cap, as this multiplies the space significantly when compared to not having one, or a Pelican case. Both of these and duffel bags will keep all our gear dry when it's in the back of the Jeep, for example. We also have canoe trip and food barrel, which doubles as gear storage when not on a canoe trip, and also keeps the bears from getting at our food. And we always have bears around.
So with all this gear, there has to be some cleaning that comes with, you know, getting clothes dirty. Some questions here around laundry, and what do you guys do if you're out for more than a week, or things get dirty along the way?
So I take care of the laundry. Roberto takes care of packing the gear, but I do laundry when possible. I don't try to do it every day. I do it once every 10 days. I do it, if I could do it more often for the kids, I would, but I'm the type that has 5 layers of this and 5 pair of socks, and so that I'm always ready in case I don't have access to a laundromat. But yes, it's I think once a week or once every 10 days. Mostly
in a private campground will be most of the time where we find a laundromat.
Because it takes hours to do 4 people's laundry.
Yeah, sometimes we stop and it's like, today's a laundry day.
Yeah, it's the afternoon, I'll do laundry, and
Yeah, and then other times it'll be just one of those laundromats in like Canmore that we drive up to and have a coffee.
And then
while
you
we
put
do
10
stuff.
machines and it takes you an hour.
There you go.
Speaking of going and being on the road, we talked a little bit the other day on your approach to how far you drive and when, and some, the kids play a factor in that in terms of, okay, they've had enough, we've had enough, we're actually just going to call it for the day and pick that up tomorrow. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to how far you usually, how long, how many hours you'll usually drive for, and then when you do have the need to stop, talk about the flexibility that goes with towing your home behind you.
They dictate.
The kids do. I'm very flexible.
Yeah.
But an important point with the kids is that they don't have any iPads or anything in the car. Catalina doesn't sit still for more than an hour. And Mikio lost interest in doing that. He'd rather look out the window or chat. So it's really, as long as they're comfortable, they're happy, I know their limits. So when I see they have reached that limit and we're not getting close to a campground.
When we can't hear ourselves talking in the car anymore.
When we start thinking about, okay, I think it's time now to consider for the next hour to find somewhere, Roberto, I don't mind anywhere, but please find somewhere in that hour where we can stop.
But when you're towing your home, like it could be anywhere. Like if it has to be a Walmart parking lot, it's a parking lot. If it's a gravel pit, we like to get the ideal place. We'll quickly say, there's a provincial park, which is like a state park, en route that way. Even though it's halfway from what we had planned, let's stop there. Right. As a secondary choice, we'll say like, a gravel pit, and then we'll just go behind one of the big gravel mounds, or just try and get into a corner, or go up one of the forestry roads just a little bit, and then we're perfect. So we go with the flow.
We also try to not drive at night.
Yes.
If we don't have to, it's better to stop before sunset so that the kids can get moving their bodies and it's still daytime, and they can still participate in the tasks of, setting up camp and making the fire, and they love doing that. To involve them is a great way to make them more responsible and understand that, it takes time to have happy ready, dinner ready, the fire ready, and they're more understanding.
So we go with the flow.
Yeah.
Awesome. And lots of questions about connectivity while you're on the road. So I'll let you guys take it away and follow up with any questions.
Right. So sometimes it's perfect to disconnect. And while at others time, it's absolutely necessary that we have internet. We either use the Airstream connected Wi-Fi device that we have in our Airstream, or a MiFi from Bell here in Canada. And this is for the majority of the time where we're not in a campground, and where more often than not, there's Wi-Fi. We found it quite the revelation when we realized we could put our data SIM card from Bell into our Airstream connected hub and then simply switch to our USA SIM card when traveling in the USA.
Yeah, and you can put both SIM cards in the hub and it automatically transfers when you cross the border.
And couple just a quick build on that, because some people might say, well, what's the difference between Airstream connected versus using a hotspot? And the biggest distinction is the size of the antenna. So I've had the experience of usually the most beautiful places that you end up camping are sometimes on the fringes of cellular connectivity.
Yeah.
And so having that bigger antenna, which takes advantage of the metal on the roof, so you get better reception, versus using my phone as a hotspot or using a Wi-Fi hotspot. So big distinction there. And then to build on what you guys mentioned about being able to put any SIM, the Airstream connected hardware will accept any carrier SIM. So you can hop in an AT&T or a Verizon or the carriers that you guys have in Canada. So have you ever looked into, I guess you do have cellular already, and then you also use the Garmin InReach for short text messages. Hey, we're okay. Things like that. So you do have a kind of a combination between cellular and satellite.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we used to have a satellite phone back in the day, but don't find the need of it with now devices like the InReach.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So the two social media platforms that we use the most to research possible points of interest are Facebook and Instagram. Through Instagram, we simply search for the hashtag of the location that interests us and then start scrolling. Over the years, we've connected with fellow Airstreamers, both on social media and in person. By perusing their photo galleries and interacting, we've discovered some of our favorite spots. During the research stage, we also use Google Maps to see forest roads and get more of a topographical feel of where we're going. So boondocking, first of all, what does it mean? It's a term by RVers to describe camping without being connected to water, electricity, or sewage. In Canada, you can find Crown land to do so, while in the USA, BLM land and national forests are your go-to. One of our favorite spots to boondock are in Oregon's national forest, which is the photo with the canoe. Not only do you get to feel truly detached from civilization by not having any neighbors like in a campground, but it's free and therefore helps aplenty with our budgeting. Our favorite reason of all of this is simply the beauty of boondocking, like you were mentioning, and that's basically being in the most spectacular verdant forests and watching speckled skies. And I think that's the essence of having an RV.
Awesome. So a bunch of questions to get through. So hopefully we have we can get through them here in the next 10 minutes. Can you talk a little bit about what's in your maintenance kit and what tools do you carry with you when you're on the road?
Do you want to answer that?
You mean like maintenance for like mechanical issues?
Yeah, so
that's him.
Right.
I can tell you about my kids'
stuff. So I have in the trunk of the Airstream a bin full of the things that I might need. For example, a plug adapter for our 30 amp to go to 25 amp to the 50 for the generator, or for places that don't have a 30 amp. In there, I've also got a few simple things like pliers, a drill, and a few
duct tape.
Yeah, duct tape, lots of duct tape. You never know when you're going to need it. What else would I be having? Just the hoses for the water and stuff. But and then yeah, that's about it. Yeah, we don't carry too much of those things, but haven't had to use them really, which is a great thing.
Perfect segue to that. Talk a little bit about the maintenance required to owning an Airstream. You guys have had yours for a few years, so yep. Lots of great knowledge and experience there.
Absolutely. I think it's key to, like any equipment, that if you take care of your gear, it will take care of you. And that's basically one of the things that we've done. So when you buy your Airstream, obviously they'll let you know you should do this maintenance on this date, your battery, your ball bearings, your things like that. And so we just try to go through the checklist and make sure that everything's done, especially as we put so much mileage on the rig. And I think it's preventive, like in many things in life, that if you take care of what your gear, then you won't have any issues. But so we've just done the regular maintenance that's been checked on. I think the last thing was they just checked the caulking on everywhere on the rig and things like that. And no, we really haven't had any issues. And I think that's the testament to the quality of the rig, because I have friends that have campers that are not Airstreams, and their rigs don't seem to hold up the same way.
It's a good point, right? If you think of these vehicles, they don't have odometers, right? So the typical vehicle maintenance schedule that's driven by mileage doesn't really apply. It's more driven by a calendar year, right? So if anyone, there are a couple questions on maintenance. For every Airstream that's made, there's an owner's manual that's published online. And in there is the recommended maintenance every 90 days or once a year, taking a look at roof caulking and things like that. Another question here around just keeping tidy and organized, right? Small space. Do you guys put everything in bins and containers? And talk a little bit about organizational strategy, and also where do you keep your food?
Yeah, so
first of all, try not to overpack clothes, because I realized that we don't use 90% of the clothes we bring if it's not wool.
Yeah.
So I only really pack fundamental layers, like our wool layers, jackets, so rain gear and down jackets. So just to minimize because we're 4 people in there. So the kids have their clothes, which obviously I bring extra of everything, because I change them too.
They do get extra clothes.
They will play in puddles and they near the fire, and so it's better to have more than have to worry about, oh my gosh, this is wet. Yeah. And when it comes to food, anything that can be stored outside, like dry food, so rice and pasta and things that don't need necessarily refrigeration. Then we have a bin for it. And all the kitchenware, I keep a couple inside that we're gonna need at night or for snacking. And then we use Pelican cases for that.
Yeah, and then we've got the kitchenware that's for the fire, because you know you get all the soot all over the kitchenware, so you don't want to be touching that inside the rig and whatnot. So we tend to have a set for fireplace and a set for inside. And then for storage, we use all of the bags and all of the bins from Pelican and Thule, and that's how we have everything in the truck, and that is our gear shed. If ever you are getting a truck for the storage people, I do recommend the windows that open from the side on the cap, so that you don't have to climb over everything in the back of the truck to find the things you need.
That's a good point. A lot of questions specifically about tow capacity of vehicles and different weights of trailers. I'm going to put a towing guide that Airstream's published in the chat right now. And this has gone through and helped explain the different types of weight ratings and definitions that are talked about in terms of gross vehicle weight and hitch weight. So it aims to help define those, but it also, for every Airstream that's made, gives you the weight in an easy to find place. So that's in the chat for folks who have had specific questions around tow vehicle compatibility. One question here around single axle and maneuverability. Easy to back up into a campsite or just back up in general?
Yeah, very, very easy. It's a very small rig now.
Turning around.
Yeah, we do U-turns on single lane highways if needed, in the middle of nowhere. We're not like your highways in the States. Our highways in the remote highways in Canada, you can do that.
Is there any remote highways in Canada?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so basically it's very easy with the single axle. I don't have the experience of a double axle because I've never had one, but it's really, really easy to move our rig around. And I think that's the biggest thing that we love about it, is that it's just so easy to drive, park in tiny nooks and stuff.
We often get people saying, "You're going to take your Airstream there?"
Yeah.
Are you serious? And I'm like,
yeah.
Wow, you guys are rock stars. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I have taken the super conservative approach when I've gone off into those wild places, is that I'll actually disconnect the Airstream, leave it at the side of the road, lock it up, and then just go in the pickup truck to make sure that my biggest fear is having to back down a forest road for 5 miles.
Yes. I had that conundrum the other day, and I was exploring, but the solution came to me pretty quickly. And I actually had a guy message me on Instagram as well the other day saying, "Thank you so much for what you did," which was that I went up a forestry road. I realized that the incline looked like 13 degrees on a forestry road. So I ended up just backing the Airstream a bit, unhitching, turning the truck around with a 25-point turn, and then rehitching and going. And so I found it really neat that I actually helped someone else in a situation, although he probably would have figured it out.
Question here around planning in advance in terms of places to camp. My experience has been, even going to places like Yosemite or any of the really popular national parks, is it can be really tough to get reservations in those spots because they open up months in advance and they're gone.
Yeah.
Quickly. I've had really good success, especially with national parks, is they're usually always surrounded by national forests because they were actually carved out of the forest system, the park system. And in the forest system, there are tons of places, usually free, no reservations required to camp. So lots of good options when you look at saying, oh, I could actually be 5 or 10 minutes outside of the gate to the park and actually not have people around me. Versus always trying to focus on, I just want to be in the middle of Yosemite. So that's been my experience. What's your experience been with having to reserve it in advance? You guys just play it day by day?
For your point that you just made, for in the States, like in Grand Canyon, we didn't want to be in the campground that was at the Grand Canyon, and so we just drove down the road for 10 minutes, not even, on the other side, and there's national forest, and everyone's camping there, and it's more wild and still beautiful. And then for a few of the national parks here in Canada will have a batch that's reservation and a batch that's first come, first serve. So the key for the first come, first serve is that often if it's crazy busy, as it tends to be here sometimes, you basically camp the night before in the overflow, and then first thing in the morning, you're in line to get a spot out of the first come, first serve spots. And then in the States, the national forests we love them. We absolutely love them. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
One time for just one more question here. This is around the four of you kind of sleeping in the Airstream. How does that work? Where's everyone fit?
All right. So the kids go to sleep before us because we enjoy our evenings ourselves alone. So I put them to sleep in the back bed. Mikio and Catalina would follow. They go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. It's easy to have the routine going this way because otherwise one wakes up the other. So they both go to sleep together. Catalina still wakes up looking for me at night. And because if I sleep in the front bed, it wakes me up. So I end up sleeping with the kids.
So she'll start with me, but then has to go breastfeed into the...
So then I sleep with the kids in one bed, and Roberto is the lucky guy that gets a bed for himself.
And the dinette bed is actually bigger than the bed in the back. So it's perfect for me. I'm 6'1".
But we also used to do Mikio and his daddy, but now that Mikio and Catalina are big enough to be together, I try to keep them together.
And I think once we get past the breastfeeding stage, that we'll put both of them in the front bed and us both of them in the back bed and us in the front, because we close the curtain, gives them the privacy, has the heating on, whatever it may be.
And the noise doesn't wake them up, so
no.
Perfect.
We do have children that are used to being in small places, and therefore they're not affected by a little noise.
No, and they're not affected by not keeping a steady bedtime routine.
Yes.
So they all go to sleep at 7 p.m. or 11 p.m. sometimes.
It all depends on the level of activity of the day.
Yeah.
Awesome. And if you could advance one slide, because I know that has the promo code for Airstream Supply Company. Right on the bottom there, Ask July. But I want to thank you guys. I appreciate the time, and that's all the time that we have for today. There are some unanswered questions that we didn't have a chance to get to, and anyone who wants us to follow up, if you send us an email to hello@airstream.com, that's HELLO@airstream.com, we'll turn around and get those answers. So I want to thank you for spending part of your Saturday with us, and then please take us a moment to give your feedback on the next screen. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.